on BBC World, more on how developing countries are fighting back against the might of Microsoft. Part 2 of the Code Breakers. Despite the personal computer revolution, laptops and desktops are still owned and run by an elite. Most of humanity has never used a keyboard and can only dream of ever having the money to buy a computer. Of those who can afford a computer, many can't afford the software to run it and use pirated software instead. But there are changes that might bridge the famous so-called digital divide. One is free and open source software, or FOSS. Its avid supporters say it's showing the potential to be that bridge between the digital haves and have-nots. As was shown in the previous episode of the Code Breakers, free software doesn't mean it doesn't cost anything after it's been downloaded without charge from the internet. Rather, that users are free to modify it, copy it, change it, redistribute it and share it. And that open source software was the rebranding of free to try and avoid that confusion. But FOSS is no new kid on the block. It's been around for more than 2 decades. It's in our car dashboards, mobile phones, and it pretty much runs most internet search engines. FOSS is already well known to those in the industry and computer enthusiasts. But most users seem to be completely unaware of it.
I'm afraid I've no idea what FOSS is.
I do not know what was it.
But the makers of commercial software know all about open source software.
I think the challenge it presents to Microsoft is it just reminds us that customers do have choice. And that when you're reminded that customers have choice, and we always need to be reminded of that, it reminds them that they have to go back to work.
A new generation, which may be getting connected to the world of information and communication technology with software they can download without paying anyone to use it, could cut into the profits of the commercial software companies. And in the developing countries, FOSS projects are making some inroads in the education and public service sectors. So are open source aficionados right when they say FOSS will bridge the digital divide? It may be strange to think for the present generation of computer users who've grown up in a world where over 90% of computers are running Microsoft products, that any alternatives other than Apple products exist, let alone ones that are distributed free and aren't restricted in their compatibility. But they do, and this software is known collectively as Free and Open Source Software, or FOSS. FOSS sprung from a movement started in 1984 by software whiz-kid Richard Stallman. The rights of computer programmers, he felt, were being restricted by software licenses imposed by the commercial software companies to protect their investment. FOSS has been embraced by a community of computer programmers and businesses around the world. Even the highest estimate of users of Linux, the most prolific free and open source computer operating platform, puts users at just 30 million. But that doesn't mean some of the big hitters are dismissing FOSS as software for the geeks.
HP's position is very simple, that we give the customer a choice. If the customer wants to use proprietary software, we are very happy to give him that. And if the customer wants to use open source software, we give him that. And we work with the open source community in a very big way.
In February 2005, computer giant IBM announced plans to invest $100 million in its support of open source software.
Our commitment has increased to open source software. We're involved in over 150 open source projects. In our Linux Technology Centre, we've got over 700 programmers and engineers working on open source projects as part of the open source community. But I think the main reason that our commitment to open source has increased is our customers have been asking for it because they see the value in it.
And even though the majority of computers in the United Nations aren't running FOSS, the UN Joint Inspection Unit highly recommends its use.
One of the recommendations we are making precisely is to ensure that all organizations in the UN system will come up with a organization-wide policy on using open source software.
This is no ordinary school bus in India. This bus's seats are equipped with a computer terminal and the ticket collector has been replaced by a technologically literate teacher. This is the mobile bus project in the Baramati district of central India, where scarce resources are being made to go further than ever before. The scheme is funded by the World Bank and the Vidya Pratishan's Institute of Information Technology located in Baramati. The school children wait eagerly for the bus's arrival. The fleet of 5 buses travel to around 35 villages each week, are fully equipped with 24 computer terminals running free open source software, which the Institute says was chosen because of initial cost savings.
In India, basically, if we want to run the projects like mobile computer lab or giving computer education to rural school children, the basic constraint is the finance. And in order to get this, definitely we should find out how to reduce the cost of the project. And as the open source is the best solution to reduce the cost of the software, so we decided to go for open source platform.
The mobile teachers are able to teach computing skills to 6,000 10 to 14-year-old pupils. The mobile bus curriculum teaches everything from the basics of computing to how to use various kinds of software and even programming skills, and it appears that this access is having even wider benefits.
Apart from this computer education, their general knowledge has increased, their subject knowledge has increased, interest gets generated so that they have started coming to schools.
By being used in programs like this, proponents of FOSS say this is how it will help bridge the digital divide. Increasingly aware of the need to address the information technology imbalance between rich and poor, Microsoft has also put several global programs in place.
There are 2 primary programs that focus on development at Microsoft. One is Partners in Learning, which is specifically, as you would expect, an education-focused program, where we've actually trained about 923,000 teachers around the world. Unlimited Potential takes a different route, which is to say there's a set of donations that we can make as a company, as a global company, which will enable civil society organizations, again, to increase access, to put technology into the hands of the disadvantaged in society.
For Microsoft, this is also good business, because most users are conservative and don't like to switch. Advocates of open source software as a boon for developing countries also contend it is highly flexible and sometimes best suited to help cope with large-scale issues like disasters. Natural disasters like the tsunami leave a massive scale of devastation in a very short space of time, swiftly wiping out transport, communications and emergency services infrastructures, and even the richest nations are surprisingly left in a state of chaos. Over 30,000 people died and nearly 1 million people were affected by the tsunami in Sri Lanka, and help and aid poured in from around the globe in the form of donations, food, clothes, money and people. All of this had to be coordinated in order that help effectively reach those who needed it most. And this needed to be done in an infrastructure that had received very little in terms of investment prior to the disaster. A vital part of disaster management is information. Who has been affected, where the people are, who needs help, and by accurately managing information using information technology, data can be processed, enabling families and next of kin to find each other and resources to be distributed to those who need them most.
The morning of the 26th of December was a terrible day for us because all of a sudden the whole of Sri Lanka faced something that had never been the situation in Sri Lanka. We had losses of people who were not traceable, people who were injured, and of course for every one person there was a whole family back at home looking for them and trying to find information.
Looking at the urgent needs that have been created following the tsunami, the Sahana disaster management system was developed by a team of over 80 Sri Lankan programmers using free and open source software.
After the tsunami, a group of volunteers from the IT industry, really the free and open source community, got together and built a solution and a suite of web-based disaster management applications. They looked at the problems affecting their fellow countrymen and all the chaos, and they'd identify those problems and build solutions around them.
FOSS worked for the improvised Sahana because the volunteer computer programmers needed the software urgently. It could sidestep red tape and download the products from the internet instantly without paying for anything. So Sahana claims that FOSS increases the agility of institutions working in disaster management.
When we started on Sahana, We had no money as such to go and purchase off-the-shelf software. We also had a problem that we needed to tailor-make them, and then we had to get at something more than the commercial product. We need to go into it. With open source, all those problems were not there.
So, a locally adapted disaster management system using free and open source software was built without needing to pay for license fees. The key advantage was having instant access to the source code. After the break, a look at FOSS going through its paces in Malaysia, Spain and the Galapagos Islands.